Welcome. Thank you for joining us. We are happy to be celebrating National Honey Month, which is September. So we thought that it'd be a good time to be joined with Mark Dykes over at the Bee Squad over at the University of Maryland. We get our honey from them, and so we use it in our almond pitorro and in our cocktails, especially in the almond pitorro. It's very appropriate considering the relationship. Mm-hmm. But we'll get into all that. So I just want to welcome and turn over the floor to Mark. Do you have anything else to add before we get started?
I want to add that this is Crystal Rivera.
Yeah.
And I'm Angel Rivera. We are the father-daughter team over at Puerto Rico Distillery. The guy behind us is Clandestino Man. He's our guy that represents the moonshiners in Puerto Rico. And I also want to express how excited we are to be featuring our partnership with the Bee Squad. Besides it being a great product, it's been really easy and amazing to work with them. And the more we've talked to them, the more we've learned and believe that what you all are going to be learning today is just amazing on many different levels. So without a further ado, we're going to turn it over to Mark, and Mark's going to take it. We might ask some questions, and then we're not actually going, this is not live, obviously. We are going to post this, but we do encourage, once we actually post this, they're going to be following the actual video. So if you have questions of your own, please put them in the comment section of the video. They'll be checking them out. We'll be checking them out, and we'll make sure that we get the information to everyone that is very interested about what you're going to hear. So, Mark, take it away.
Excellent. Thank you guys so much for having us. Like they said, my name is Mark Dykes. I'm the coordinator for the University of Maryland Bee Squad. I'm going to switch over here real quick to our PowerPoint, and we will get started talking about the Bee Squad. Okay. So the buzz about the University of Maryland Honeybee Lab. So for those of you who don't know, the University of Maryland has a very active honeybee lab here in the state. We actually are a nationally recognized lab. We have many different projects that reach out through both commercial and small scale beekeeping operations. And so we'll talk about that a little bit. But to start out with, I want to talk about a little bit about the history of beekeeping. You know, that's something that we don't give a lot of thought to. I'm sure at some point you've seen the slide or the meme on Facebook. It says, I wonder what the first guys that thought, hey, it would be fun to stick my hand into that nest of bees to get some honey. You know, that's very true. I always kind of question that. But we found that beekeeping has a very, very long history. Bees and man have been intertwined for much longer than a lot of people give thought to. We think of bees now as mainly an agricultural insect that is very beneficial. However, before man sat down roots and became an agrarian society, bees were used for harvesting both the honey and the brood. So, you know, bees were used long before we started growing crops. And as you can see here in the middle, there is a picture of people harvesting honey from the side of a mountain. That's a very old cave drawing that they found. On the right-hand side is a picture from the Smithsonian National Museum, the Natural History Museum, detailing bees carved into tombs in Egypt. The Egyptians actually were active beekeepers. And so the bottom image there is kind of harkens back to that cave drawing. This is somebody harvesting giant honeybee comb. Those are actually giant combs of bees that they build. This is the Asian giant honeybee, Apis dorsata, and they actually carve these off, the honey off of them, and harvest it that way. So this is something that has been going on for probably, if not hundreds, if not thousands of years in Asia, that is still done to this day. So it's something that we've definitely been intertwined with bees for much longer than modern times. So beekeeping in the United States, they were brought in sometime around the 1600s. bees actually travel pretty well, and so it wouldn't be that big of a deal for bees to be brought over on an ocean voyage. Although I don't know about you, but I don't know if I'd want to be in the bowels of that ship if the hive tipped over. They were recorded down in Florida in the 1700s. In the 1800s, Russian settlers brought the bees into Alaska. And so bees have a very long history in the United States. The Western honeybee, the honeybee that we keep, like I alluded to with the slide, it's actually not a native to the United States. And so that's one of the reasons we look at it more as animal husbandry than we do of taking care of a native species. So if not to be confused with native bees, honeybees are not native here. However, there are many different native bees to the United States, which I could spend hours and hours talking about. But there are about 400 plus different species just here in Maryland. So if you're interested in that, I encourage you to seek out further information on that, and I'm happy to provide that for you. So back to beekeeping in the United States. So modern beekeeping started in about the 1600s. We've continued on since then. Historically, if you look up in the corner there, the classic beehive, those round woven baskets, those were called skeps. Those were actually used for a long time. They're still used throughout the world. The problem with that is when you harvest the honey, you kind of destroy the hive. And so the modern hive that we all see, the boxes, is a design called the Langstroth hive. That hive has been in use for a couple hundred years now. It is very efficient because it has removable frames. So we can remove those frames, we can extract the honey, put the frames back in there, and the bees can use them the same day. So it's a very efficient form of beekeeping. So fast forward a few years to about 2007, we started noticing a lot of bees dying off. And so a lot of you out there have heard of CCD, or colony collapse disorder. That is an issue that we had where a lot of bees were dying, and we couldn't really figure out the reason for it. CCD is not seen as much anymore, but one of the biggest problems facing the bees right now are varroa mites. If you look on the bottom right there, that is a bee, and you see a little hitchhiker on it, that's a varroa mite. Varroa mites are actually a parasite similar to a tick for us. So I want everybody to hold their hand up in a fist, put that on your chest. Can you imagine having a tick that big running around your body, sucking your blood? No, absolutely not. We've actually found out, one of the graduate students did a project from our lab in association with many different labs, and actually found out they eat fat bodies. So I've thought maybe, okay, well, that wouldn't be so bad. It'd be a great way to lose weight, but no, it's not not something we like. And so varroa mites, in addition to several other factors such as nutrition and pesticides, have really caused a lot of issues with bee populations. And because of that, we've seen colony loss has increased dramatically. And so that's something that's obviously not very good. I will emphasize right now that honeybees are not in danger of going extinct. Sometimes people will say that, and it seems like this doomsday prophecy, but honeybees currently are not in danger of going extinct. But one of the issues that we find is that beekeepers might be in danger of going extinct. With the high number of losses we've had, it becomes almost an unsustainable industry. So we are actively working towards research to help lower those colony loss numbers so that beekeepers can stay in business. So it's a lot of things moving here all at once, but I'll kind of get into that with the colony loss survey and then tell you how we're doing a pretty decent job of keeping bee populations steady. So this is a graph that you may have seen before, the Bee Informed Partnership, which is a nonprofit that was started through our lab, keeps a national survey each year. It's the longest running survey that we have on honeybee populations in the United States. We found over the last few years, that since about 2006-07 when we started this, that honeybee winter losses and annual losses have been a lot higher than they historically were. Historically, it would be about 10 to 15%. Once CCD hit, once varroa mites and the viruses that they vector came in, losses skyrocketed. And so at this point, we're still sustainable. However, if those losses get up much higher, they kind of think probably possibly at 50% losses. If it tips over 50, it would definitely be the tipping point for sure. is that it would be unsustainable to keep bees. It would be very hard for beekeepers to keep bees. And so that would become one of the major issues we have. And so that's what we definitely look into here at the lab, is ways of lowering the loss rates. In the United States, the number of managed colonies has historically decreased. And I don't want you to think about this as loss. I don't want to think of this as we've just lost all these bees. If you think about the United States since 1945, what's happened? We've urbanized, haven't we? We've gone from rural communities to farming communities to more cities, less farms, less small farms. And so the number of beehives, we think, has reduced because the people have moved from that rural agrarian society to more of an industrial urban society. And so that is why that number has declined so much. I don't want you to think that it's, oh my God, we've lost 8 million or 6 million beehives in the United States. No, we haven't. It's just the number of managed colonies has reduced over the years because of the change and the need for them. And so that's not a bad thing. It's just what has happened. But what's interesting to me, though, is over the different data that's collected by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, is that the number of hives that's managed has stayed about the same consistently since CCD, colony collapse disorder, was described in 2007. And the reason for that is, even though we're losing 30% of the hives each year, we're able to make up for that by doing what's a process called splitting, which is using a biological behavior of the bee, the swarming behavior, where, excuse me, we're taking a colony and splitting one colony into 2 or even 3 colonies. And so by that, you're able to rapidly make up those numbers. But this gets back to economy of scale and just the amount of labor that goes into this process to making it profitable for beekeepers. So if we're having to do this over and over each year, we're having to spend all this money and energy on creating new colonies to replace dead colonies, we never really get ahead. We can keep those numbers even, but we don't really start making up additional colonies. And so that's where it becomes a problem with beekeepers, is it suddenly becomes where you're just keeping your head just above water. You're just making enough money to keep the operation in the black. But if those loss numbers go up much higher, then that becomes an operation that operates in the red, which is where we don't want it to be. And so that's what we're really striving to do. And so why does this matter? Why do we need to keep all these beehives around? That's something, who likes honey? We all like honey. Honey is actually not the main use of beehives for commercial operations. Now, honey is great. We all love it. I always encourage people, if you can, buy local honey. We do sell it to the university as a fundraiser, so I'll put in a little pitch for that. But if you buy local honey, you kind of get to know your beekeeper. Honey is a lot like wine. It's different from year to year, and it's different from season to season. So just because you go to the store and buy that clover honey, you think, okay, that's what honey tastes like. I can tell you if that is not what honey tastes like. Honey tastes like everything from extremely sweet to almost bitter and unpalatable. So it's really neat to go out there and try different types of honey. I highly encourage that. But let's talk about what bees are really used for in agricultural setting. They're used for pollination. Pollination contracts are the bread and butter of commercial bee operations. One of the biggest, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, is almonds. Almond is king when it comes to pollination contracts in the United States. Beekeepers get upwards of $150 to $200 per hive to take their bees to almonds. And so you can load about 400 beehives on a semi truck, and you can send a truck to California in about 3 days from Florida, nonstop driving. And so in February, one of the largest insect migrations in the world happens. Well, I say that. I mean, I'm sure there's bigger ones, but in the United States at least, you will never know unless you look for it, but there are hundreds and hundreds of trucks, semi-trucks, that have beehives on them going down the highways heading towards California every February. Wow. It's amazing. It is, a majority of them are coming from Florida and Texas, where it's warm all winter, so they're able to keep their numbers up. They're actually doing a new type of overwintering where they use old potato barns that they're able to do climate control. And so the bees are staying in North Dakota so it's a little bit closer for them, and are actually able to travel from North Dakota to California. So it's a whole new industry. It's changing. It's very adaptive. But this route right here that goes from Florida through Texas out to California is, needless to say, very, very busy every spring. So something a lot of people don't realize. From there, the bees go to a number of different pollination contracts throughout the year. Some go up to the Pacific Northwest, where they do cherries, cranberries, raspberries, blueberries, a lot of seed production in that area. Some are shipped back to the East Coast, where they do blueberries and cranberries still, apples, all the cucurbits, cucumbers, stuff like that, pumpkins, blueberries, citrus a little bit, believe it or not. You know, honey, citrus honey, orange blossom honey is real popular, but most varieties of citrus actually don't need bees. So that's kind of an interesting thing all on its own right there. But a lot of what we eat requires honeybee pollination. Now, I'm sure you've heard that quote, and I put air quotes around it, that Einstein said that if all the bees died, we'd all die in 4 years or something like that. Well, there's two things wrong with that statement. First off, Einstein never actually said that. There's never been a definitive proof that he said it. It's just kind of one of those internet rumors. Okay. The second thing is, if bees died, first off, there'd be a lot bigger problems that we would have in the world. But second off, we would still have food. So corn, wheat, any type of wind-pollinated food is not reliant on bees. But I'll tell you, that's a very boring diet. That's not something I want to have. I love my strawberries. I love my blueberries. I even love my almonds. And so bees are very useful because they provide a lot of good pollination for a lot of the foods we enjoy and that we use in other industries. So if you think about it, almonds, we eat a lot of almonds, but almonds are used for a lot of different things, from milk, which I'm still trying to figure out how you milk an almond, but you know, using the extracts for anything from cookies to rum to you name it. And so bees are very important, not only because they pollinate, but they allow different industries to utilize that product for cheap. You know, we could still have almonds if we didn't have honeybee pollination. We could be out there with brushes and pollinating them ourselves, but that wouldn't be very useful, and it would be very, very expensive. So definitely not something we want to do. So moving on, let's talk about beekeeping in Maryland. I said before there wasn't any commercial beekeepers. That doesn't really mean that there's not bees. We have about 2,100 beekeepers in the state of Maryland, so we have quite a number of beekeepers. I would say a majority of those work with different state and local bee clubs. And so we have several different bee clubs, I think with 20 different bee associations throughout the state of Maryland. So if you're interested in beekeeping, I highly recommend, and the next slide, I'll show you the Maryland Beekeeping Association's link that you can find all the different clubs. We have about 15,000 colonies in the state of Maryland. And I can tell you about 200 of those are University of Maryland colonies. So, you know, we contribute to the overall numbers of bees in the state of Maryland. So like I said before, we do have a Maryland Beekeepers Association, which is the state organization that works with beekeepers. They provide a lot of educational programming. They have different conferences throughout the year. They have 3 different conferences, or 4 different conferences. And they're very good at bringing in different speakers from not only the state of Maryland, but from around the country. And so even if you're not a beekeeper, you're just interested in beekeeping, I would recommend becoming a member. It's very inexpensive. I think it's like 20 bucks a year, and you get a lot of good information from it. So even if, like I said, even if you're not wanting to become a beekeeper, but you're interested in bees, join the Bee Association. You'll get some good information from it. Okay, let's take a step back from all the bees and talk about what we do here at the University of Maryland. I know I've covered a lot of information, but we have just a little bit more to go. But I want to talk about what our research efforts here at the university are, and then also how we provide information and programs to the public. So we have a lot of different moving parts. It was so many, and it became so hard for me to try to describe it that I created this diagram. It works a lot better. So Van Engelsdorf Honeybee Lab is kind of the overarching structure that we're under. Dr. Van Engelsdorf has been in beekeeping for quite a number of years. He was one of the first to help describe colony collapse disorder. He's been at the forefront of a lot of the national push to recognize honeybees as such a pivotal species for commercial pollination. And so Dr. Van Ingelsdorf has been around for quite a number of years, like I said, and has really pushed that idea that we need to create healthy bees. And so it's been a pleasure to work with him. I've actually worked with Dennis for a number of years in other roles that I had. So it was a really cool to be able to come and actually work underneath him and help get the word out about bees here in the state of Maryland.
Is he one of the gentlemen in the picture?
Absolutely. He is the one next to the gentleman in the yellow. He's the one actually in the red right there with the beard, the white hair. So underneath the Van Ingelsdorf lab, you've heard me speak about the Bee Informed Partnership, the ones that do that awesome survey each year. That's actually a nonprofit organization that was spun off from the lab. So starting with some of the work that we did here in the lab, that nonprofit became its own entity from the efforts of the lab. And now it's actually Dennis was the president of it for quite a number of years since its inception. He's recently stepped down and passed the mantle to Auburn University. Their apiculture professor there stepped up as the president of that, but he's still obviously on the board of it. And so Bee Informed Partnership, I'll show you their website here in a minute, but it's a very cool organization that primarily focuses on working with commercial beekeepers. They actually have what's called tech transfer teams where they go out and they're similar to crop consultants and look at disease and pest levels for commercial beekeepers to help them manage their colonies better. So that's a really cool thing. We still do a lot of work with them, primarily processing all the samples that they produce, which they produce tens of thousands of samples each year. Our lab at the University of Maryland is mostly responsible for processing a good number of those. So we'll talk about that here in a second. But to break it down, we have the Bee Squad. We have the actual lab. We have a physical lab on campus. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you've come out to visit our lab, haven't you, Crystal?
Yeah, to pick up the honey.
It's not very big, but we do a lot of stuff out of that lab. And then finally, we have the education portion. We have graduate students that are under Dr. Van Ingelsdorf. I think we have 3 different students right now going. We may have more, but they do different independent research projects, primarily focused around honeybees. So it's really cool to be able to work with graduate students and share in their excitement for their projects, in addition to all the other independent research the lab does on its own. So quite a few different moving parts in there. So just to give you some of the ideas of some of the programs that we do, the Colony Loss and Management Survey, we help with the statistical analysis and collection of that through the lab in partnership with the Bee Informed Partners. We also work on the National Honeybee Survey, which is a separate survey that we do. It's one that primarily apiary inspectors throughout the United States collect samples from their colonies or from different colonies in their state, and we look at the snapshot of the national health of honeybees overall, looking at pests and diseases, that type of thing. We have a Sentinel Apiary project, which is a citizen science project that's administered through the lab, that beekeepers themselves become the scientists and take samples from their hives and then send those samples back to the university to get processed. And so we have a kind of a different snapshot of colony health throughout the United States. Like I said before, the Bee Informed Partnership Tech Transfer Team sampling. Excuse me. We work doing processing the samples for them. I think we're up to I want to say 15 to 20,000 samples a year. So we get a lot of bees come through our lab. And then obviously the student research that varies quite a bit, from individual rearing to looking at mites to looking at bees at a colony level. So it's a lot of different projects, a lot of really cool science going on there. This is the homepage for the Bee Informed Partnership. I encourage you to go check them out. It's beeinformed.org is their website, and I'll have the websites listed at the end of this presentation. But they have a lot of cool information that you can find about bees on a national level and look at different national survey results. A lot of the information that we collect is available on there, free to the public to look at. So if you're a data nerd and you want to check out some really cool data on honeybees, it's a great website for you to use. So now let's move to my program. We've talked a lot about the other stuff, kind of the out there stuff, the history of beekeeping, that type of thing. So I want to talk about our Bee Squad that we have here at the University of Maryland. I helped set this up a couple years ago at the lab, we said we wanted to extend our extension presence. And so when I came on at the lab, I said, this sounds like an excellent project. I was a regulator for about the last 10 years or so. So I'm the one where the beekeepers all disappeared when I came out to the bee yards. So I'm happy now to be the guy they actually want to help. You know, when I would always tell them, hey guys, I'm from the government, I'm here to help. They didn't believe that so much. So now I'm actually from a university, so I'm truly here to help. So it's a different role for me, but I absolutely love it. So when we started it, we kind of wanted to say, okay, well, how are we going to do this? And one of the biggest things that I think is missing in a lot of research is that bringing that research to the bee yard. How is that pertinent to that beekeeper, the research that we do in the lab? It's really cool. It creates a lot of really good papers out of it. But at the end of the day, how does it help the beekeepers? And so that's what I wanted to do, is to find a way to translate all these really cool science experiments and science questions that we have and questions that we've answered in the lab to how that helps a beekeeper. And so the way that we do that is we want to bring the science to the bee yard. And so that's what we try to do. And that's our main mission at the Bee Squad. I kind of given you this information before. I'm the former chief inspector for the state of Texas. I worked at Dr. Jamie Ellis's lab at the University of Florida a number of years ago. So I've had this really cool opportunity to see both sides of the fence. And so it's been a lot of fun, but I'm very happy to be in Maryland and teaching beekeeping. So it's been a really cool experience. Lots of great people. And this is a snapshot of the lab. I think 3 years ago now. I think we need to get a new picture. Right now we're not all allowed in the same space, so it's a little different, but maybe I'll take a snapshot of the next Zoom meeting we have. That'd be an appropriate group shot for these days.
Yeah.
So we break down the Bee Squad into several different programs. A majority of them are focused on education. Actually, I would say all of them are to a certain degree, but we do actually have straight education programs where we create classes. We did a number of hands-on classes before COVID hit. We've done some online courses since the pandemic. We're going to continue this. We're going to create more content. It's a little different when you have to do it over the computer, because it's not as easy to be in a bee colony with, you know, your phone trying to focus on different things, but we're working on finding different ways of doing this. And so we're going to continue to do this. At some point, we're going to return to hands-on format. Personally, I learn best by doing. And so it's a lot easier for me to say, okay, this is how you manipulate a colony, than just to try to show you online. So at some point, we will go back to that. We do work with the state, the MSBA, the Maryland State Beekeeping Association, and different clubs around the state and different beekeepers to identify needs for classes. So we really try to work with beekeepers on that. I will amend this to say too, I am always open to teach and educate the public on beekeeping. So if anybody watching this has an idea or has a club or something that says, hey, you know, it'd be really cool to inform the public on XYZ with beekeeping or bees, I'm always open to that. So if there's need out there, we'd like to look into filling it. Another cool program that we have that right now is on pause, but we will be starting it up eventually, is Afternoon in the Apiary. We actually invite beekeepers to come out to the apiary to look through the colonies with us. This is a great time, and I usually keep these groups to no more than 10 people, for beekeepers to come out and learn techniques of beekeeping, of how we do it, how we've integrated these best management practices into our apiary, especially for newer beekeepers that don't have as much experience or may not have a mentor to help them. We encourage them to come out and we walk them through different management practices in the apiary. So this is a pretty cool thing. We've had a lot of success with this in the past, and we're hoping to bring this back online very soon. Mentoring programs, we will work with different groups, both individual beekeepers and clubs or group of beekeepers, to help inform them better of working with their colonies, management practices, that type of thing, more of a one-on-one setting. Club speakers, this is another thing we do. We do, of course, now all virtually, but we talk to quite a number of clubs each year. I think I had 35 or 40 different talks last year to beekeeping clubs. But in addition to beekeeping clubs, we also talk to the general public. We've spoken to some garden clubs. We've spoken to, I think I've spoken to a Rotary Club in the past, quite a number of people that are interested in beekeeping. And so if you're interested in club talks, by all means, reach out to us and we'll see if we can provide a speaker for you. And then finally, educational resources. This is something that we keep on our website. I have links to different educational resources that I found are good. You know, there's a lot of information on the internet, and there's not always good information.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we've tried to do with this is find the best information out there that is clear, concise, is not pseudoscience, and use that to direct beekeepers through our website portal. So as you can see here, the one up here I always like to put, because people don't think about this a lot, but we do have information on native bees as well. And so I encourage you to go in there, if anything, just to look at the pictures. Sam Droege with the, I think it's USGS, has a lab at Patuxent Research Center that they actually do. They're one of the best native bee photographers in the world out of that lab. And so they have some absolutely gorgeous picture of information, but also information on planting for pollinators, that type of stuff. So how you can help. And so that's all on our website under the resources tab. And then finally, one of the last programs that we have that I want to talk about is our colony management services. So this is something that we got the idea from the Bee Squad up in Minnesota, the University of Minnesota. They actually started this a number of years ago. We've started it about 2 years ago and have had pretty good success with it. But what it is if you want bees on your property, or if you're a property manager for a country club or a building or something like that, and you want to bring bees onto your property, but you don't necessarily want to manage them, the Bee Squad has a program for that. It's their colony management services. And what we do is we actually will go out and manage your bee colonies for you. And that provides good benefits for you because it shows your investment into pollinator research and good pollinator health, but it also provides good information for us because we use those colonies by collecting information like mite levels, food levels, that type of stuff. And we use that information to help create best management practices on kind of a hyper-local scale. And so if you're interested in having bees on your property, let us know. We'll work with you on that. We work with you to find bee colonies first off. And then once you find those and purchase them, then we will actually come out and take care of all the management for you. It's a cool program. I love doing it. A lot of my management clients will come out and chat during the inspections. And one of them in particular, she loves it because they love going out watching the bees. They love watching what they do, and they don't have to lift any heavy boxes or get stung. So it works very well for people that love bees but don't necessarily want to deal with them. So by all means, reach out to us, and we are happy to tell you more about this program. Generally speaking, clients will start in the spring, but right now is a great time to get set up for the program because that way we can ensure that you get bee colonies and stuff for the spring. So definitely let us know. We'd love to work with you on that. So finally, some information that we want from you. We want to identify areas where education programs are needed. And so that is both for beekeepers and non-beekeepers. If you have questions, I know one of the big questions I get a lot of times is what can I do for help bees? And we'll talk about that here in a minute. But those type of programs are what we want to learn about. What we want to hear from you guys of how can we serve you to help serve the bees better. Identifying needs. Yep.
Mike, I have a question before you move too far away from,
sure.
From the programs. So you noted when you stopped by the distillery that you noticed that we actually have a program where the tastings at the distillery benefit a nonprofit, and
Absolutely.
You that the well was one that we were doing last month. I'm curious to know which of the programs that they might be participating in. Just it really intrigued me that right there's all of this interaction between the different organizations helping each other, and we were very excited to see that you guys were helping them as well because they're a great program.
Absolutely, and I was very, very pleased to see that. So the Well has a program, and actually it's I believe they're a company now, that they use a lot of the participants, or use some of the participants that are employees of it, called Hun's Honey. Hun as in the Baltimore Hun, H-O-N, honey, which I, as a non-Marylander, it took me a few minutes to learn that. But they do bee products. So they have a couple colonies, but they purchase honey from us and different suppliers throughout the state. They do candles, they do beauty products. It is a fantastic organization. And so the profits from that, from my understanding, go to the Well, which is a women's empowerment and resource center. And so it is a fantastic organization. So what happened is a little while ago, one of the lab members, Karen, had read an article about the Well and about Hun's Honey and said, this is fantastic. We want to help. And so we reached out to them and said, hey, how can we help? And they said, well, we'd love more information on, beekeeping. And we recently had them out to our shop to teach them how to process beeswax. And so when they get raw cappings off of extracting honey, how to render those into a useful wax that they can use in their products. And so that was a great program that we're helping to support through our educational resources. We're working with them on kind of on a one-on-one basis. My hope is to work with them from here on out, because we really support what they do. And I will give a huge plug out. If you're interested in supporting that organization, go to Hun's Honey. They have a website, and buy some of their products, because they have facial scrub, which I use. No, I'm kidding. I don't use it, but I probably should. And different candles. They have really cool gift sets. Really neat gifts. I mean, really, really, truly neat products that they do. They make all of them in-house in Baltimore. And like I said, the employees are all people that were that use the services of the Well. And so it's a great organization. I'm glad you brought that up, because I am always apt to give them a shout out, because I truly believe in their mission statement. So
Perfect, thanks.
for sure. And so so moving on of just, and this is obviously transitions right into this, how can you help? How can the average person, the non-beekeeping person, help bees? And so one of the ways, and I'll give a shameless plug here, is donating to bee research. We are always welcome donations. Everything that you put into the program is recycled right back out to help beekeepers. And so that's a huge way. And if you're interested in donating to the Bee Lab, by all means, reach out to me. I don't know if you noticed, but my email and the website has been at the bottom the whole time. We can direct you in the right way there. The other big thing people don't really necessarily think about is just planting native wildflowers. More and more research is finding that even very small, what we call postage stamp size native planting areas benefit bees tremendously. It's a stopover point in between all the grass that they have to fly over. Lawn grass doesn't do a lot for bees. And so providing native wildflowers, especially ones that bloom throughout the year, multiple different species, and you can look on our website, or you can talk to native nurseries, and they will help you with this, is finding those flowers. That's a huge thing that the average person can do. Another big thing is reducing pesticide use. I'm not saying don't go out there and don't spray or don't do anything like that, but use it correctly, use it judiciously. There's a plan called Integrated Pest Management that you can look into for turf bugs, crop control, that type of thing. Integrated Pest Management is great because it uses chemicals as kind of the last step, or a part of it, but not the whole thing. And so I highly encourage people to reduce the amount of pesticides that they put on their lawn by using integrated pest management. And if you contact your local extension agent, they can help you a lot with finding information out about integrated pest management. And so those are a couple big things that you can do. Another thing, and I don't have a slide for this, unfortunately, I really should have, but is we do sell honey as a fundraiser through the lab, which I know your distillery was gracious enough to buy some from us, and you can, if you want to test it, I highly recommend going down to the distillery and testing it. That sounds like a great way to see. But we do have 1 pound jars and small little hexagon jars that we sell as gifts. And so if you're interested in that, please, by all means, reach out to us at the bsquad@umd.edu, and we can see about setting you up with some honey. Another way to keep up on what's going on is we have a Facebook page. It's just simply UMD Squad or at UMD Squad. And that is where we post a lot of our current events, different things that are going on, different, cool articles that I find, that type of thing. If you have a program that has to do with bees or, that type of thing, and you want to promote it, let me know and we'll look into it. And if we approve it, we'll put it on the webpage to allow beekeepers around the state to hear about it. And then finally, our website, I alluded to this a little bit earlier, but we try to have a lot of good education materials on there for both beekeepers and for the general public. Like with any of our programs, if you find a need that we haven't covered, let us know and we'll look into covering that. And so I really like this website because it's adaptive. I control it. I'm able to go in there, update it on the fly if I need to. And so if you find it lacking in resources, especially for the general public, like, oh, how do I find out information on this? Let me know. If I can find a good link for that, we'll put it on there. And then hopefully somebody else won't have that question. And then finally, just kind of wrap up here, I want to put these websites up here. These are the main ones that I spoke about today, the UMD Bee Squad, the Van Ingelsdorf Bee Lab, and then finally the Bee Informed Partnership. And so with that, I'm kind of done. And so if we have any other questions that came up or want to discuss a little bit more about how awesome bees are, I am definitely down for that.
I don't have any questions right now, but I do want to encourage everyone to look into donating to the Bee Squad. And I think I can fairly safely say, without consulting my business partner, that I did mention that we do have a program where the proceeds of the tasting room go to nonprofits. We have sort of it lined up going up, but I think we would love to have the Bee Squad come and be part of that program. We have all your information, so I think at this point it's just a matter of when we get to the month. Typically, we put on a nonprofit for an entire month to let you guys know, so you know that the posting is coming and you guys can share it, and we can share it, and we really encourage everybody to support them.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Thank you guys so much.
So your partner's greenlighting adding them to the lineup.
She's the real boss. She's working a full time, so I only go in there and sneak in on weekends and help out. So I have no control over her the rest of the week.
Thank goodness. I do have a random question.
Sure.
Honey. I heard a while ago that if you have allergies, that if you have some local honey, that it's good for the allergies. Is that because of the pollen, or
It's probably because you're getting a very low dose of the pollen, and kind of similar like getting an allergy shot. You get exposed very incremental small doses, and so you build up an immunity to that. The science is still a little bit unclear on that, if it truly helps or if it's more of a placebo effect. But I know a lot of people swear by it, and so the way I look at it is it doesn't hurt you, so why not try it?
All right, that's all I got.
No, so I mean, your presentation was extremely thorough. It covered all the way back millennia, right? So you covered everything on the program. Again, I want to thank you for coming on. We started the videos for the distillery with what we knew most, which is basically the rum, the flavoring, and the distilling. But what we found out is that there's a lot of things that programs, people that are helping us with the distillery that have such interesting stories and programs that it is really worthwhile presenting information like you just did now, because the better you all are positioned, we find that the better we are positioned in order for everybody to sort of move forward. So
we're definitely all in this together, that's for sure. So I always like to use the bees as an analogy for that. It's a hive full of a lot of individuals that has one common goal, which is to survive. And I think at the end of the day, that's what we all are. So the bees teach us a lot of good lessons like that.
Okay.
That's beautiful. I don't think I can top that. So
No, perfect. All right. Thank you for joining us. We are recording this on a Sunday morning, so definitely appreciate you actually giving us a part of your weekend.
My pleasure.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.